"You do not belong here, ma'am." The words rang sharp across the marble floors of the airport VIP lounge, slicing through soft music and glassy laughter. A woman in loose linen pants and a faded cardigan paused, gripping her canvas tote a little tighter. A few heads turned. Some smirked. A phone was lifted, already recording. She stood still, her breath steady, her eyes scanning the room for a place to sit. Behind a pillar, a man in a black suit watched silently. "Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Comment below." Her name was Ellen, 68 years old. She wore no makeup, no rings, no scent, but the soft powder of her morning lotion. She had lived most of her life in a small town outside Topeka, Kansas, the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked and the grocery clerk always asked about your grandkids. She taught elementary school for 35 years, retiring only after her husband passed. Ellen had never been a woman who chased things. Not money, not fashion, not approval. She liked warm bread, quiet mornings, and walking barefoot in her backyard garden. She wore the same windbreaker every spring. Used the same hairbrush since 1989. Now she worked part-time with her son, Matthew, who ran a small but growing aviation logistics firm. She handled scheduling and handwritten notes, sometimes sitting in on strategy calls with a legal pad in her lap. When Ellen listened, people tended to slow down. She never spoke much, but when she did, her words held weight. Today, she was flying from Dallas to Chicago to meet a group of investors. Her son had insisted she use the private charter, said it would be easier, more comfortable. "It is all arranged, Mom. Just check in and wait in the lounge." She had never flown private before. When she received the black and gold jet pass in the mail, she tucked it carefully inside her cloth tote. Alongside it were her notepad, 2 pens, her reading glasses, and a small worn photo of her husband, in uniform, smiling from beneath the brim of his old Air Force cap. At the airport, she moved quietly. She always did. She noticed things most people missed. The child crying into his mother's scarf, the man with tired hands holding a to-go sandwich he barely touched. She gave way to hurried travelers, waited patiently in line, and thanked every staff member she encountered. But when she arrived at the glass entrance of the VIP lounge, something shifted. She stood for a moment, unsure if she was in the right place. The room inside was bright, modern, filled with polished shoes and polished voices. Men and women in sleek suits lounged on curved leather seats, their phones glowing in their palms. Still, she stepped forward, held out her pass with both hands politely, and that was when the young woman behind the desk looked her over, her sandals, her plain cotton shirt, and said, "You do not belong here, ma'am." The woman at the desk did not even take the pass from Ellen's hands. She just gave her a tight smile that did not reach her eyes. "This lounge is for VIP and corporate travelers only," she said, with practiced sweetness. "You might want to try the public seating area near Gate B." Ellen blinked once, then glanced down at the pass she was still holding out. "I was told this would work here," she said quietly, her voice steady, though she could feel the weight of eyes gathering. It was not just the staff now. A man in a navy suit, sitting near the juice bar, turned to look at her with a half-smirk. He nudged the woman beside him, who covered her mouth and whispered something behind her hand. Someone near the fireplace let out a low, amused whistle. The staff woman exhaled like she was explaining something for the 3rd time. "Ma'am, this is a high-tier lounge for private jet clientele. These services are reserved for our verified passengers. Perhaps you have a different kind of ticket?" Ellen looked down again, then gently opened her tote bag. She pulled out a slip of paper with her itinerary, her name printed clearly, next to the charter number and the company name. She handed it over, but the staff member barely looked at it before sliding it back across the desk. "Unfortunately, this just confirms you are flying today. It does not show elite status. We have to be strict. We hope you understand." There it was again. "We hope you understand," the phrase people used when they had already decided you were not worth the effort. Ellen tucked the paper back into her bag. Around her, voices were rising in amusement. One woman, sipping a mimosa, said a little too loudly, "Maybe she thinks this is like one of those airline credit card lounges." The man beside her laughed and added, "Probably wandered in from the food court." Ellen felt heat rise to her cheeks, not from shame, but from the sharpness of being misunderstood. Still, she stood calmly. "I was told to wait here before my flight. My son arranged everything," she said, her words gentle, shaped by years of helping small children find their way. But the attendant had already turned slightly away, scanning in a pair of younger travelers behind Ellen, glossy, confident, their sneakers still white from the box. The dismissal was quiet, practiced. Ellen took one step back, then another, her tote bag snug against her side. As she turned toward the hallway, she caught one last comment from a man near the espresso counter. "She probably just wants a free coffee. You see it all the time. Where are you watching from today? Comment below." Ellen did not make a scene. She simply walked a few steps away and sat on a bench just outside the lounge, facing the wide hallway of the terminal. Her knees ached slightly from the long morning, but she kept her back straight and hands folded over her canvas tote. Through the glass, she could still see the lounge, see the soft chairs, the flower arrangements, the golden lighting that made. Everything inside looked gentler. She looked down at her pass again, quietly checking the time of her flight, the gate, the meeting notes scribbled in her careful handwriting. Inside, laughter rose again. A group of travelers clinked glasses by the snack bar, toasting something. A man in polished loafers held up his phone and gestured toward the window, pretending to zoom in. Ellen felt it. They were talking about her again. She lowered her eyes and focused on her breathing. She had not flown in years. Her last trip was with her husband, a weekend in Boston to see the harbor. He had carried her bag the whole time, even when she told him not to. Now she traveled alone. A young employee passed by with a tray of bottled water and glanced at her with hesitation. But he kept moving. No one asked her if she needed anything. Inside, the lounge, the woman from the front desk leaned toward a tall man in a gray blazer. She whispered something, glancing toward the window. The man looked up, followed her gaze to Ellen on the bench, and frowned. Then he shrugged. Whatever he said back made the woman laugh quietly. It was easy to ignore someone who did not belong, but Ellen was not someone who needed to be seen. She had never been the type to demand attention. She had spent decades listening more than she spoke, always watching, always absorbing. That same quiet strength kept her still now, even as the ache in her legs deepened. Then, from the far end of the corridor, a man in a black suit turned the corner. He was walking at a smooth pace, no rush, no hesitation. He wore a badge clipped to his jacket, something official. Security or management, maybe both. He carried a tablet in one hand and an earpiece tucked behind his left ear. As he passed the lounge, something made him slow. He glanced once toward the glass wall, saw Ellen sitting there, saw the way her shoulders stayed still, the way her bag rested carefully in her lap like it carried something sacred. He paused, just for a second. Then his eyes narrowed. He stepped to the side, leaned against a nearby post, and watched. Ellen did not notice him. She was staring at a little girl across the terminal, spinning in circles with her backpack bouncing behind her. The suited man did not say a word. He just reached for his tablet and tapped something onto the screen. His gaze remained on Ellen, sharp, thoughtful, and growing more curious by the second. The man in the black suit stepped away from the pillar. His shoes made no sound as he approached. Ellen was still watching the little girl across the terminal, her face soft with memory. When he spoke, it was with quiet authority. "Ma'am, are you waiting for someone?" Ellen looked up slowly. She met his eyes with the kind of calm that unsettles people used to hurry. "I was told to wait here." But the lounge would not let me in, she said gently, holding out the black and gold pass again. My son made the arrangements. I am flying. Private today. He did not dismiss her. He took the pass carefully, scanned it with a small device clipped to his tablet, and waited. A soft chime sounded. His eyes flicked to the screen. Platinum tier clearance. Private charter. Registered under the executive branch of a major aviation logistics firm. Charter code verified. Ellen Montgomery. Passenger of record. His expression changed, but only slightly. It was the look of a man realizing something had gone very wrong and would need to be made right. He looked at Ellen again, longer this time. Noticing her steady posture, the way her fingers rested gently on her bag. He nodded once. Thank you, Ms. Montgomery. Please wait here just a moment. She gave a small smile. Of course. Then he turned. His stride was different now, direct, focused. When he entered the lounge, the front desk attendant glanced up with surprise, then straightened quickly. The suited man leaned over the counter, said something too low to hear. Her face dropped. She reached for her keyboard. Her fingers hovered, then began to type quickly. He pointed toward the glass. Every movement was controlled, quiet, professional, but firm. The energy shifted. The man in the gray blazer, who had shrugged earlier, stood up and stepped away. Other guests looked up from their drinks. Inside the lounge, something was changing. Outside, Ellen sat just as she had before, calm, unmoved. The only shift was the way she now held her tote just a bit looser. Her shoulders seemed lighter, though she had not moved an inch. A few minutes later, the door to the lounge opened again. The man in the black suit returned, eyes soft, but serious. Miss Montgomery, please come with me. We are honored to have you, today. She stood slowly, knees stiff but strong, and nodded. Thank you. As they walked side by side through the glass doors, the room fell quieter. Conversations dimmed, phones lowered. The woman at the front desk looked like she wanted to vanish. But Ellen said nothing. She followed the man toward a quiet corner seat, one with a view of the runway and a table beside it for her notes. A fresh cup of coffee was already waiting. Not the kind from a machine, but freshly poured, steaming gently in a ceramic mug. The man gave her one more respectful nod. If you need anything at all, I will be nearby. Then he turned and walked away, leaving behind a silence far louder than anything spoken. What would you do if you saw this happen at your airport? The hush inside the lounge had turned into something heavier. Conversations faded into sips. Phone screens dimmed. And still, Ellen said nothing. She sat with her notebook open, glasses low on her nose, reading through notes in her slow, thoughtful handwriting. Every now and then, she would pause to look out the window where the runway shimmered under the afternoon sun. Across the room, the man in the black suit returned. This time, he did not come alone. Trailing behind him was a senior manager in a navy vest, and just behind him, the young woman from the front desk. Her eyes were wide now, her voice gone. She clutched a clipboard like a shield. The manager approached Ellen with care. Ms. Montgomery, he began, clearing his throat. We sincerely apologize for the earlier misunderstanding. Our staff made an error. Your credentials exceed all required levels for this facility. Ellen looked up, face calm. I see, she said softly. The young woman stepped forward. I am sorry. I should have looked more carefully. I made assumptions I should not have made. Ellen studied her for a moment. There was no anger in her gaze, only a tired kind of truth. It happens, she said gently. The man in the black suit added, Your access has already been noted across all terminals moving forward. You will never be questioned again. A murmur passed through the lounge. The woman with the mimosa lowered her glass. The man who had joked about the food court sat straighter in his seat. No one was smiling anymore. Then came the final ripple. The suited manager turned to the staff member and said, low but clear, "Please step into the back office. We will speak privately." Her face crumpled, and she followed him out. Doors closed softly behind them. One traveler, an older woman with a scarf around her shoulders, stood and walked over to Ellen. "I watched the whole thing," she said, her voice trembling. "I am sorry I did not say something earlier. You showed more grace than I would have." Ellen offered her the same smile she gave nervous parents on the first day of school. "Sometimes it takes people a moment," she said, "to see what they are looking at." Just then, a bell chimed at the desk. "Passenger Montgomery," came the announcement. "Your aircraft is now ready. Gate escort available." The man in the black suit returned one last time, offering his arm. Ellen rose carefully, collected her tote, and tucked her notebook inside. She left the coffee untouched. She did not need it anymore. As she passed through the lounge, a few people nodded at her. Others looked down, unsure of themselves. One man near the fireplace whispered to his wife, "She owns a jet?" The man in the black suit answered without turning his head, "She runs part of the company," and then they were gone. The hallway to the private gate was quiet, carpeted in soft gray, lined with framed black and white photographs of aircraft and sky. Ellen walked slowly beside the man in the suit. He did not speak, and she did not need him to. Some silences are earned, like still waters after a storm. When they reached the glass door to the tarmac, the jet waited, sleek, dark silver, its engines still and patient. A flight attendant opened the door with a warm nod. Ellen gave a small wave in return. Before stepping outside, she paused and reached into her tote. Out came the small photo of her husband, still tucked in its plastic sleeve. She looked at it for a long moment. "We are doing all right," she whispered. Then she climbed the steps, each one measured, her spine straight. Inside, the cabin was soft and quiet, pale leather seats, a vase of tiny white flowers, no crowd, no eyes watching, just space to breathe. She placed her tote on the seat beside her and eased into the window chair. The flight attendant brought her water, offered snacks, asked if she needed anything. "No, thank you," Ellen said, unfolding her notebook. "I have all I need." Back in the airport lounge, the desk stood empty for a long while. The young staff member did not return that day, but later, as Ellen sat in the sky above soft clouds, she opened her tote to place something inside and found a note resting at the bottom. It was handwritten on lounge stationery. "I am sorry I judged you too fast. I hope I learn to look deeper next time." There was no name. Ellen folded the note in half and pressed it into her notebook, between pages of flight details and quiet thoughts. She smoothed the page once and closed it. She did not need an apology. But something about the handwritten words felt honest, like a door slowly beginning to open. Hours later, the plane touched down in Chicago. Her son met her on the runway, coat flapping in the breeze, arms ready. "You all right, Mom?" She smiled. "Better than all right." He looked at her, puzzled. "I will tell you in the car," she said. As they drove toward the city, she watched the skyline rise slowly in the distance. She thought of the way the lounge fell silent, the way strangers' eyes had changed. The way dignity, once dismissed, found its voice again, without anger, without force, just stillness, just truth. And later, in the hotel, she opened her bag and placed two things on the nightstand beside her: the photo of her husband and the note from the girl who almost turned her away. They did not look like much, but to Ellen, they were everything.